Welcome back to the Great Big Intergalactic's How to Start a Podcast series. In this episode, we're once again going to get right into the question and answer portion of the show. And today we'll be talking about things like promoting your podcast, helping listeners find your show, search engine optimization, and I'll be asking about money. Derek, the main guest for this podcast series, is the owner of Hindsight 101 Media. He is an audio-video consultant, and basically what that means is that he helps people with their video needs, as well as audio needs such as podcasting, recommendations, editing setup, and all of those things in between. And you can find him at hindsight101media.com. All right, let's go straight to the questions. Derek, how can new podcasters help people to find their show?
Having people find your podcast is a tricky question because, for example, like YouTube. YouTube is the second largest search engine compared to Google. And fortunately, Google owns YouTube. So that's kind of having the first and second spot is kind of nice. But with podcasting, it's not very centralized. So, as long as you hit the main ones like iTunes, Google, Spreaker, Stitcher, and a few others that I can't remember, you hit those main ones, you'll pretty much hit 95% of anyone you want to listen to your podcast, but there's still no one main repository, and searching for certain things is hit or miss, stuff like that. So you really have to kind of sell yourself, push either word of mouth. You can go to different, depending on what type of topic you're doing, there may be forums or groups that, you can kind of hint at your podcast. I wouldn't like spam because that'll push people away right away, but say you have something that's informational and helpful, you can say, oh, check out this podcast, stuff like that, and drop that in the forum for other people to listen to. You can do advertising. But just know that depending on where you go and how you do it, you may not get a very big return on how much you spend because, you may get a lot of hits while you're advertising, but you may only convert 5% of those hits. So is it worth it? It just depends on you and what your expectations are. But you can advertise on Google, YouTube, Facebook, and those are paid ones. But then, like I said, word of mouth and just kind of grassrooting it is probably the cheapest, but not the easiest way to go. But I do like Facebook and some of those other ones because you can really target. I want podcasters that are 20 to 30 that like golf, if your podcast is about golf, and you can really target into people that are interested in topics around your podcast. So you have a more likely have a conversion with them than, just blasting it out anywhere and praying for whoever might listen.
Does a new podcast need a website?
I don't think when you're first starting out, you need a website for your podcast, just because, like I said, you may not really be into it. So, you want to do a couple episodes before you truly decide if you want to do this podcast, because having a website isn't free. There's a lot of places that you can kind of host, but it's kind of So I say starting out, no, you don't want a website. But as soon as you realize this is something you really want to do, then I would say get a website as soon as possible, even if you do it cheaply. So, you could do a WordPress, but WordPress is really hard to learn, but it's on the cheaper side because you have to pay for very little. But then if you do something like Squarespace and stuff like that, you have a monthly fee that you're always paying pretty much out of pocket unless somehow you're getting some money from your podcast right away. There's also another site that my co-host and I use where it's made for podcasting. So they kind of have templates, and it's fairly inexpensive when you think about it from like a Squarespace point of view. The monthly fee is very minimal. And it's set up for podcasting. So I like that because it was very little to set up. Didn't have to learn anything. It's kind of just, plug this information in here, check a few boxes, and you have a website. So, but the purpose of having a website is because all these other platforms, such as Facebook, YouTube, or wherever else, Instagram, they all own your audience. So your audience doesn't have a direct contact to you. They have to go through this social media site to get to you. So what happens if, say, Instagram goes in like Vine and just disappears one day, then you lose your audience and you have no way to contact them. But if you have a website and their email, you always have direct access to them. So that's why I always say get a website so you can have direct contact with your audience.
What is search engine optimization and what does that do for us?
SEO is basically a way of how do people find your podcast. I guess that's kind of how I describe it. Google it for yourself, get the full definition. But SEO takes in a lot of factors. So your description, your tags that you have to put in when on your hosting, it'll kind of say like, what are you about? And you have to put different tags like DIY or golf or fishing or whatever your podcast is about. Like you want to put tags in there, the title of your episodes, the title of your actual podcast, all that stuff goes into SEO because the more information you can feed the machine, which I would say Google, the easier it is for them to place you in a category and recommend you to somebody. Or I wouldn't say recommend, but when someone's searching for something, then they know, you talk about golf, and then you get with your description and your titles of your episodes and the title of your podcast and your tags pretty much says, I like golf, I talk about golf. Then when someone's looking up golf, Google will serve you up to them because they were looking for golf and you're about golf. So that's kind of what search engine optimization is just making sure everything lines up correctly the right way in order for people to be able to find your podcast. It's a little more complicated than that. And there are actually people you pay to do search engine optimization for you. But that's really the cheap definition for it. I guess you would say my version. But like I said, go look it up yourself and you can get more information about it.
And the question that we all want to know the answer to, is it possible to make money from our podcasts?
Making money from a podcast isn't easy. It's not impossible, but it's not easy, especially when you're first starting out. I would not go in the expectation of I'm going to be rich or I want to make money. I would think that is a future goal. Right now, you really just want to hone in and work on your skills so you can have the potential of making money, because you can get like sponsors that will sponsor your podcast, but they want a large audience. They want a return on investment. So when you have like a Joe Rogan or someone like that, where people will pay you just for like a 5-second, hey, I really like such and such on their podcast. And that's like every episode, they'll pay you a nice chunk of change. But then also you can do, if you're local, say you're doing local sports, you can do like local bars and go direct to them. And maybe you can get kind of a deal with them. Also, some of the hosting platforms will put ads into your podcast, but really they're paying pennies on the dollar. So you're not going to get rich, especially if you're only getting 20 downloads. A penny a download really, or penny a listen, whatever you want to call it, really isn't a whole lot of money. So there's ways you can make money, or you can sell things through your podcast. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. It's just, I wouldn't make that your goal in the beginning. That should be something, the fifth or sixth thing down the road. There's a lot of stuff that comes before that.
All right. And one last question here. How many listeners should we expect to have as new podcasters?
So a benchmark to determine how good your podcast is or how well you're doing is actually relatively low. Coming from like YouTube, where, I put out a video and I'll get hundreds, if not thousands of views. Podcasting is very different. So I would put your expectations low and then understand that you are doing well. So I have some numbers from another podcaster. So this isn't something that I know for sure, but this is something that they shared. So I'm going to share it. So the top 50 podcasts, 50% of the podcast only have 28 downloads in the first 7 days. Top 25 is 84 downloads. And then top 10% is 300 downloads, top 5% is 700, and top 1% get over 4,000 downloads. So if you're just getting in the 20s to 30s, you're doing good. But I know people, they want hundreds or thousands of downloads. And it's just, when you're starting off, it's probably not going to happen unless you have an audience somewhere else. So, maybe you have a YouTube channel and then you want to cross over to podcasting, or you have a blog or just something where you can port your audience over, then you'll get some big downloads. But if you're just a no name and you decide that, hey, I want to do a podcast, I would just keep your expectations, minimal at that point.
Well, I feel like we've learned a lot of really valuable information from Derek on this series. And if you want to keep learning more from him, be sure to check out his website at hindsight101media.com, as well as his YouTube channel. There's so much more that we could continue to talk about when it comes to podcasting, and I may actually add some additional episodes to the series in the future. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and get back into digging into some of the other subjects that I like to talk about on the show. I hope that you've all learned as much as I have from all of this, and I'd like to thank Derek for contributing so much to this project. Also, thank you, Great Big Intergalactic listeners, for doing what you do. See you all soon. Thanks for listening to the show. The Great Big Intergalactic can be heard on Spreaker, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, Apple iTunes, and anywhere else that podcasts can be heard. If social media is your thing, you can follow the program on Facebook or Twitter. If you enjoy the show, upvote, share, like, and subscribe. Whenever and wherever those things can be done. If you'd like to send feedback, the easiest way to do that is to email the show at tgbiuniverse@gmail.com, TGBI as in the Great Big Intergalactic, or you can leave a voicemail at 216-200-7940. Contributions could include written feedback, audio submissions, voicemails, or potentially even live guests. It was great having you today, and see you next time.